Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Today, we continue on with our Let's Play of Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific. And I went back and forth on this episode because it was going to become a very long, big episode because we're coming up to Hawaii. So Pearl Harbor, we're coming up to setting up Pearl Harbor, and there's obviously a lot of things and a lot of orders to give at Pearl Harbor. And there are several small island chains and some other things I wanted to talk about, and I didn't want to give that stuff short shrift. And if I would have combined it all into one, it was probably going to be a 2 hour episode. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we do some of the smaller islands? Let's do Fiji, the Gilberts, Cook Islands, which we're looking at right here. Why don't we do those, as their own separate episodes so we can take our time and kind of think about these different spots on the map? But also then I can work in a couple of bigger concepts that have come up while we've been doing the tutorial or setting up, in this Let's Play. So let's start with one of those concepts. And that is, as I was setting this one up, there are a few places in Cole's spreadsheet where we turn replacements on for certain air groups or air squadrons. And it reminded me of the discussion that we had before, which is I probably should have started the game with upgrades and replacements off for aircraft. And I now see the wisdom of that. I guess I hadn't really played that way before. I had always kind of just turned them off as I went, but there are a lot of good reasons you want to start with them off and turn them on. And that really goes for everything on the Allied side. Um, and we did do that, for certain things, but the aircraft were still set to upgrade and also set to replace automatically. And so we run the risk if that happens, if we forget about a unit out in Boise, let's say, we run the risk that all of our upgraded aircraft or replacement aircraft all go to Boise, and we don't need that. It makes no sense. Just if all other things being equal, you would rather be in a unit that's not locked to a certain area, so not locked in the United States, for instance. So if, again, all other things being equal, if you just upgraded and replaced units that were out, squadrons that were out in the Pacific, you would be ahead of if you just have them everywhere because you're going to end up with a lot of upgrades and replacements in places where you don't need them. So I was thinking about that discussion as I was setting up and turning the replacements on some things, or given the selection I made at the start, I was turning all of them off, and I was just kind of getting annoyed having to go and check every single air squadron. And, I thought, well, this is basically how you do it. This is how we should do it. So we haven't been using these menus up here a lot because usually when I'm talking to you, we're looking at the map, we're going around the map and talking about what I've already done. But when I actually do the setup and I'm putting my orders in and giving these units orders, I use these buttons up here quite a bit, what I call the info buttons in the tutorials, because they're very helpful. Let's just click over here to bases. I put them all in alphabetical order, and if I can't remember where a place is, I find it in alphabetical order for the base, because some of these bases can be very obscure. Even in this episode, it's not like off the top of your head you're going to remember where Rorotenga is. Now, as you play the game more, maybe you will, but it's not something that generally is going to be, you'll say, oh, we need to go down here to the Southwest Pacific or something. You're going to have to look it up, and this is the best place to do it right up here in the bases, list all bases. Well, these menus are not just for information. Now, I've called them the information buttons, but they really are a lot more powerful than that. Yeah, or they can be if you want to use them that way. So let's look up here at list all land-based air units. So I said, gosh darn it, I don't want to go around and look at every air unit that we've set up so far and figure out if I've turned on or off upgrades and replacements, right? Well, if you look at this screen, we do not have any filters on. So this is every air group, air squadron in the game on the Allied side, from China to Pearl Harbor to Russia. You've got every one of them here. Now, you can always turn the Soviets off if you want. For these purposes, it doesn't really matter. Um, but you'll see here upgrade and replace. All right. So, you can also see a lot of other things like how many ready aircraft, what's the total number, what the experience and fatigue of the pilots are, and morale. This has a lot of good information. I find that a lot of players, when they're first starting off, maybe don't use these menus or these, info buttons as much as they should because it gives you a lot of information that is all centralized in one place. But one of the things it does is it shows you every unit set to upgrade and every unit set to replace. So instead of going to all of those squadrons to make sure that I've turned them off for upgrades and replacements, I said, well, why don't I just go someplace where I can give that order to every single allied air unit, and then I'll go back to the ones where we are going to upgrade or replace. And then as we're setting up here in the future, we can talk about each one of those. So if you look down here, you do have orders on these screens that make it easy. They're like big group batch orders generally on these screens. So if look at this, allow automatic pilot selection for the list, or allow manual pilot selection for this list. Now, let's think about this for a minute, right? It says this list. Well, right now I don't have any filters on, but let's say that I decided I wanted to manually select the pilots for all Dutch air groups. I could turn off all nations, just bring up the Dutch, and then give this batch order, allow manual pilot selection. Let's do that. And for everyone on here, it says mode, that's manual, okay? That just changed. Now let's go back to automatic, and they all switch to A. You see here, automatic. And so this is a very powerful way to enter a lot of orders at once. I know that the setup could be just massive. So if there's something that you want to do with all of your troops, let's say, or all of your air squadrons, or if there's some that you want to do with all British air squadrons or all United States air squadrons, maybe you want to pick those, or maybe you want to upgrade all of the US planes but nobody else. You can mess around with the filters here and give these huge batch orders to large numbers of squadrons. So what did I do? I came up here, I had no filters on, so it's every allied air squadron that's in the game at the moment. Um, Now I could click on this, and this is what it was before. This said Y for yes. We had allowed this when we picked our selections at the start of the game. I think it's under options maybe. We had picked this, and these were all Ys. So what did I do? I just clicked on this button. Click to deny upgrades for the groups on this list. Well, this is all of the air squadrons. We have no filters on. So now these are all no. And then I went back to any of the ones so far in the spreadsheet that we do want to allow upgrades. It's not many. And there's a new one here that we just got over here at Dutch New Guinea, where we do want to allow upgrades and replacements. So, I did put that in manually, but now we've turned every air squadron in the game to no for upgrades. I did the same with replacements, and you see here, no replacements for the groups on the list or allow replacements for group on the list. You can, put in a batch order for whatever list you want to make uh, in the game. And so it makes these menus a lot more than just information. You can put orders in. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second because when we went through the info buttons in the tutorial, I feel like maybe I gave the impression that they're just informational. And they do give you a lot of information, but you can also, do a lot of batch orders here. You can also see what the missions are. One way that I use these, for just for instance, if you're getting paranoid about whether you're giving orders to every single air squadron that you want to, and maybe you forget one or you think, gosh, did I skip over one? Rather than constantly, hopping back and forth, you can look at this list, right? And now, we haven't done anything with the Soviet Air Force, and we're not going to. We will not be putting all of these orders in for the Soviets. I just never do it because I would probably start the game over if the Soviets hop in. It just makes it a different game. But when we do training, you've been noticing for the most part, unless we have a primary mission that is not training, and then training is kind of the secondary thing we do. We peel off some planes for training. If we're training as the primary mission, these should all be 100%. So you can create your lists and kind of look really fast and say, oh, okay, this says, I can tell you the default is 40. So if you see training 40, there is a very high likelihood that you have not put in orders for that air squad because so many of them at the start of the game start at training 40 for whatever reason. And you can very quickly look, if you, when we get all done setting up everything, one thing that I will always do is I would turn off all nations, go to US Navy, and kind of look down this list and say, okay, what am I, what's popping up here as training 40? Well, here we see Eastern US. We have not set up the Eastern US as a quote unquote off map base. And so that, but once we have set up everything on the US side, I could look through here very quickly and say, oh, we did not enter in orders for this air squadron. We need to jump over to the Eastern US and do that. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about this time. Also, I will tell you these menus, I always try to get them back to everything before I leave because they stay with the filter on that you've left them with. And if you're playing this game, you get 6 turns down the road, which may be, several weeks, right, with the speed of this game. You may forget that you've got filters on, and all of a sudden you're not looking at all of what you want to be looking at. And so, just a you know, pro tip, right? Helpful hint: always try to get these back to being everything before you leave them, unless you are going to continue using that filter for the foreseeable future for some reason. Just, something to think about. Now, the second big thing that I wanted to mention that maybe we have not really talked about much before, that it dawned on me because we were doing, Dutch New Guinea this time, and we came here to Morocco. Now, Morocco, we are going to build up this base. This becomes kind of part of our triangle here between Moresby, Horn Island, Morocco. We're going to be trying to do a lot of anti-submarine warfare. We're going to try to build this up because as the Japanese come down here, we don't want to give them an easy straight shot through this strait here to send their subs down here, maybe even surface craft, because, you know, that gets down here in this Townsville, Nomaya. We are going to be slightly trying to hold on to the Guadalcanal area. I think we do send something here to Lunga. Um, so this whole area where we are going to be doing a lot, oh, Luganville, but mainly Townsville and this kind of whole area where we're sending things north from Australia. You don't want the Japanese to get a toehold here, with subs or other surface ships down here. So we will be building this up. Now, as we were setting this up, I was looking at it and I realized this is something we haven't talked that much about, and that is supply stockpiling, yes, fuel stockpiling, yes, and also how many are required. You can bump that up. And maybe as a new player, you're saying, well, what does that mean? Why would you be doing that? I mean, you get the basic idea of stockpiling, I guess, but you know, what's the reason for it here? Well, that is because at this base, we don't have anything here at this base right now. You know, it's barren. We've got a size 1 port, size 1 airfield. I guess there are 100 supply and 50 fuel, but that's it. But we're going to be building this up. Because of that, we are actually going to need a lot more supplies and fuel than the game currently thinks we will need. Okay, and there's a whole algorithm. I'm not going to go into it here, other than to say it's based on port size, airfield size, what you've got docked here in the port, how many aircraft you have. There's a very sophisticated algorithm where it tells the game, you know, how much supply should this be, should we be requesting, how much fuel should we be requesting, and you know, it tries to draw that to there. But you know, right now we've got nothing. So the game says, oh, well, this is just a backwater, it doesn't matter. But we know we're going to be building this area up. So we're going to try to stockpile here, right? This is going to be telling the game, you know, bring things here and we're going to try to stockpile it here so that when we do get the other stuff there, they've got something, right? And so we could also boost up this supplies required, kind of giving it a false, well, it's not false, it's a future expectation of supplies needed, so it starts building up supplies and or fuel at this location. You can see the game is already requesting 1,000 fuel at Maroc. That is just built in right now, but you could request more supply. And we're telling the game stockpile it here. Don't let it out. Don't let it go because we're going to need it. So just wanted to mention that because I know that this has been in the setup a few times. And you may have been curious, why is that? It really is what I would call the potential of a base. So when the potential of a base is much more than what it is currently, you may want to start stockpiling stuff there, or may want to, in advance, start requesting more, so then it stockpiles and starts building up. Okay, so those are kind of the two big points I wanted to talk about. With that said, let's go down to the Cook Islands. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the Cook Islands. As you can see, it took me a second to even find them. Here is Rarotonga. We're not going to be doing anything in the Cook Islands. We have this group down here. There you will see they are New Zealand troops, and so you know it's sometimes hard to tell because the way the map is here, it doesn't give you a very wide. Oh boy, now where am I going? Right. Okay, Cook Islands are on that side of New Zealand. New Zealand's right around here somewhere. Oh gosh, sorry. There it is. I guess I went this way and we were a little too far north to even see it. So here's New Zealand. You know, New Zealand is actually quite important and can become much more important if the Japanese start to invade and come down into what I call our Iron Wall or Iron Crescent here, a little further north. You may have to start running things through Auckland. As a matter of fact, we were having some kind of back and forth in the comments talking about the fact that some people like to go down, and we'll just come over here, like to come down here. Well, I'm struggling today, aren't I? To Tahiti. There we go. Like to come down here to Tahiti and then down to Auckland. And, you know, if their cargo ships can't make it all the way to Australia, that is a very safe route. And also you can refuel in one of the two places along the way. And you build Tahiti up into a nice kind of island, you know, base with floating supply. And, you know, you really build up the fuel and supply there at Tahiti. And you can sail cargo ships in there. They can get a quick top off. You know, if they need to, they can hit Auckland as well. And then, you know, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump up here to Sydney. And New Zealand actually provides quite a bit to the war effort. There's a lot going on down here. It's a very interesting place to set up. But as part of that, kind of the point of what I was talking about, if I can find them again, are the Cook Islands. There they are. So a lot of these little islands out here will be New Zealand, colonial islands, if you will, out here in the Pacific. There are also French islands. Tahiti, for instance, is French. So, at the start of the game, the Cook Islands are not important at all. If you do build up Tahiti and your iron wall, your crescent has been pushed back. So if we go north here a little bit, Savi and Suva and Nadi, these are the links in the chain, right? If the Japanese should happen to come and take these, where are we going next? Well, we're going to Tahiti and the Cook Islands. So they could become very important. They're just not yet. And we don't have any engineers out here, so we're not going to build anything. And that's really, I mean, there's nothing much else to say about the Cook Islands. Let's go up here to Dutch New Guinea. Now, we're not going to do Papa. We're just going to do Dutch New Guinea. We'll do Papa, another time, probably when we get to the P's, but I'm just guessing there. Uh, Also, Papa is Australian. New Guinea is Dutch. Now, I don't know what would have given that away, but they are Dutch. So what's going on up here at Dutch New Guinea? Well, I mean, you have kind of two important, really important spots. Now, I already told you we're going to be building up more rocks, so we won't talk about that again, but that is one of the things that we did here. You have a potential base here, you have a potential base here. We may eventually do something with these if we want to. These are going to be a couple of places, Ternate and Ambon, that are going to come under immediate pressure from the Japanese. And then once they take the Philippines, they're going to be coming into heavy pressure. Um, we do have some aircraft out here. So in Ternate, we have this group that is flying search and they're flying it, you may say, well, that's kind of a very limited area. Well, this is going to give us quite a bit of visibility into what the Japanese are bringing down here, because as you see, we are not too far away. This is almost as close as it gets. Out here, it gets close as well. Between Japanese and Allied forces. So we're going to be running some patrols out over this seeing what's going on. We've decided we're going to build fortifications. We obviously do not want to build up the airfield or port. It's just too far forward, too close to the Japanese to do this. Now, you may remember Monado, we have some ASW going on here, and down here at Ternate, we're going to be running this naval search to just see, what are the Japanese bringing down here? Are they using this as any kind of launching pad? Are they headed this way? Are they headed down this way? We're going to try to get that kind of visibility. Now, over here at Ambon, we actually have an Australian squadron, okay? And they're going to be running even at a Dutch airfield. These guys were here. I did not bring them here. They were already here. They're going to be running some naval search here. This looks like a pretty smart place to do it, right? I mean, this looks like a place the Japanese might try to sneak down in here and get, down into our kind of underbelly here. So we're going to be running some naval search. We do have some fighters here, and they will be training. They are Dutch fighters. The B-339, which is an okay aircraft, it's fine. These level bombers, we've got doing naval search as well. This one, a very narrow naval search, and it's actually headed south. Um, it's not like this is a huge squadron, it's 3 planes, but of course this is very important. We want to know if the Japanese are moving this way, or if they're moving this way, or moving this way. So we've got some naval search going on down here. Now you see the task force, uh, symbolism there that we're moving a task force down here. Now I've got this listed as Seaplane Babar. And this is another thing that's kind of almost like a general point because we've seen this several times. We saw it up at Billiton, and we briefly mentioned it. But we are setting up these seaplane bases at, kind of smaller bases along the Dutch East Indies here, so that we can bring all of our float planes there and use these just like we would, an airfield. But they're seaplanes, so we don't need a big airfield. We don't need to go crowd the airfield. We're just going to use these as seaplane bases. And you've seen that a lot here in the Dutch East Indies. It's kind of an interesting concept. If you're interested in it, you should go read kind of some of the history of those, these kind of floating seaplane bases that were set up out in the Pacific. Pretty interesting stuff. So, Ambon has got this garrison battalion. It's got an assault strength of 28. Okay. They've got the coastal guns. Now, I mentioned this when we were talking about Tarakan up here, the guns of Tarakan. But any of these places, just a general tip, any of these places that have guns like this, and so we'll come back to Ambon and look at those again. You want to keep troops there and keep a minimum garrison there. Not this kind of garrison that is required by the game. I'm just talking in general about garrisoning. The reason is these guns are very powerful in this game. You can make the Japanese hurt trying to take these bases just because of these guns. They really tear up some Japanese transports. And so you don't want them to easily walk onto an island and just take it right away, you know. And that would be the case if you just kind of had no troops here at all. You got this one solitary gun battalion, but you abandon it. And Ambon's maybe not the best example. A better example really is Tarakan, where these transports can come up here and maybe try to take this base first. They're getting chewed up by this gun. They could even run amphibious and offload someplace else. You do not want to make that easy for them at Tarkin. I see too many allied players that bust tail out of here with this unit. They want to get it out. Um, and if you do that, you give the Japanese way too easy of a time taking a base that's located in a swamp with a massive gun battalion. So it's just a general point, I guess, that for any of these bases that have coastal guns like that, keep troops there. Don't look at them as speed bumps again. We've had that whole discussion. I'm not going to go into it again. But look at them as places where you can slow the Japanese down. Now, they're going to get bombed the crap out of by Japanese aircraft, but, it is what it is. If you can, keep the Japanese from taking Ambon for 2 or 3 weeks extra or something, because you keep this unit here, this unit, it's going to be well worth it. So most of these places were building up bases or fortifications for the most part. I already talked about Morocco. Then you have the Ellice Islands. There's nothing going on there at all. And then we get to Fiji. And Fiji is a very important spot. There is Fiji. So in Fiji, we have Nadi, and Nadi could go up to a level 7 airfield. It's not much of a port, I'll tell you that. And we have Suva. Now, Suva is one of our main nodes when we go Pearl Harbor, Christmas Island, um, Pago Pago to Suva. So Pago Pago to Suva. This is, part of our Iron Curtain right here. Um, and so, Suva is a very important base. You really got to try to do everything you can to keep the Japanese from taking Suva. So at Suva, we've got, some planes. We've got some ships. We've got these are New Zealand troops. It's a New Zealand base. Did I say New Zealand? Yeah, it is New Zealand. I'm sorry. Uh, so this unit has a 35 assault strength, and this unit has a 35. So it's pretty good. I mean, you look at Suva, its overall assault strength here is a 75. That's not terrible. by any means. We're gonna build the airfield as high as we can. I I can tell you right now though, this is going to become essentially an American base. Now, it will still have the New Zealand flag. You know, it's not going to all of a sudden to a United States flag just because you're bringing U.S. units here. It is a New Zealand base, unless the Japanese take it over. But we are going to be pumping this full of American troops, planes. We'll have it as a staging base for some ships. Suva is going to be one of the most important nodes for the game. And like I said, you have an airfield up to 7. Naughty has an airfield nearly up to 7. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is, why are we not expanding the port at Naughty? So we're expanding the airfield. We're going to try to build that up, and we're going to build up the fortifications. That's because, we've got a bigger port right next door here at Suva. And Nadi, to build up a port takes a ton of supply and time and engineers. It's just not worth it when you have this port right next door that you're expanding. It's just asking too much of this little bitty island to be expanding both of these ports at once. I mean, we could try to do it. We are going to be running a ton of fuel and supply in here, but really, it's better just to focus on Suva for that. Now, we can kind of spread the planes, between the two airfields, but it's really going to be all about Suva. Now, what do we have here? We have a cargo task force we're sending back to LA. Oh, yeah, we have the French destroyer Triomphant. Great name, Les Triomphant. Okay. So we have a French destroyer that just happens to be here when the war breaks out at Suva. Uh, this destroyer is going to go over here to Bowen. It's going to remain on station. And you may remember this base force here at Bowen is going to Milne Bay. And so that destroyer is going to come over here. It's going to meet the transport that is going to take that base force up here to Milne Bay. And that will already give you an indication, hey, the Japanese are going to get subs down here quick, right? You can't be haphazard with your transports or other valuable ships. Uh, right from the start. So we're sending a destroyer over here to run ASW with transports taking this base force up here to Milne Bay. Um, back out here to, there we are, to Suva. Let's see if there's anything else that's interesting to say. Not really. You've got some resources here. You see we're running some training for ASW Patrol and then actually some ASW Patrol itself. You may say, hey, why are these guys pointed backwards? Well, most of your ships are going to be running, you know, to the south here. And so we're running it here for now. Naughty, I think we send these guys. Oh, they're training. Okay. They're 50-50. In a short amount of time, we'll be getting some recon up in here. Oh, while we're here, here are the Elise Islands that we skipped over. You know, that's where they are. There's not a whole lot to say about them. Same with the Gambier Islands. We're not going to be doing anything with them. But let's go to the Gilbert Islands, which are right up in here, right there. Okay. Um, and this is kind of the last point of this episode or thing that I found interesting in this setup. This one's going to be a little bit shorter because we are going to be doing Hawaii next time. That may actually go over 2 episodes. We'll see how that goes. I haven't made them yet, so we'll see. I'm going to be setting those up next. Uh, we've got Nauru Island and Ocean Island, and you'll see here that these are Australian bases. So sometimes I struggle for just a second because Australia and New Zealand, their flags look similar. But yes, these are Australian islands. The Gilbert Islands are Australian. And you'll see the Japanese are right here. And, they're here in the Marshall Islands already. And they're in some force. You see a dark red unit here. some lighter red units and some more darker red units, So we're this is right on the firing line, right? And these guys, these units are out here in the middle of nowhere. They're engineering units, so we would like to have those. Heck, let's just take a look at them. What do we got here? They've got 18-pounder gun. They've got a little bit of aviation support, a few engineers, and some support in this one. That's Ocean Island. Let's look at Nauru. Nauru, same kind of idea, right? Very similar kind of unit. We are actually going to send a troop transport up here eventually. I say eventually, within a few days, and try to get these guys out of here. Engineers are valuable to have. I will tell you, you wouldn't want to do that with a high value transport. I haven't set it up yet, but I would imagine that the transport we're sitting up there is maybe an 8-pointer or a 9-pointer, which is very low for a transport, but it shouldn't cost much to transport them. Yeah, I mean their total load cost is 200. I'm sure the other one's similar. And so we've got it right now on build fortifications in both these places. We might as well not make it easy for the Japanese, but the Japanese are going to take these islands, and we're just going to try to slip in here, grab these guys, and get them out, and get some valuable engineers someplace where they're needed. No reason to just let them go unless we were going to be risking a high point value ship. We wouldn't want to do that. We're pretty much in bombing range, or we're very close to bombing range here. Or you could even have the Kitty Butai as it retreats back from Pearl Harbor, may just want to run through here. You never know quite where it's going to go or where the AI or a human player is going to send it. So anyway, the point being is we're going to try to get these guys out if we can, but we're not going to do anything silly to do that. So with that, I think that covers, kind of 2 or 3 big overall points that I wanted to make as I keep setting these up. I keep thinking of new things, to talk about in the general sense that'll help you play the game better or understand the game better. So we did that, and then we just went around to a lot of these little islands. The most important really being, these 2 bases on Dutch New Guinea, which are right up here, Ternate and Ambon. I didn't mention Sarong. Sarong also has some patrol going out here, some naval search. It also has a couple of task forces. Another one of these seaplane bases, or what we're going to turn into a seaplane base, was here. So I didn't mention that. There we go. We've mentioned it. Uh, Other than these Dutch New Guinea bases, of course, the real highlight of this one is down at Suva, in the Fiji Islands, part of our, defensive wall. I keep calling it different things every time. The Iron Crescent, the Iron Wall, the defensive wall, links in the chain, whatever the heck you want to call it. This is, we're going to be running a lot of ships just south of here. So we really want to build these places up. And believe me, we will be. So with that said, as always, it's been my pleasure. I love talking to you about this game, playing the game, can't beat that, right? So for Strategy Gaming Dojo, thank you so much. As always, I'll talk to you next time.